Okay, so this class is a review of certain portion of that chapter on portfolio management of institutional investors. Now in this chapter, portfolio management for institutional investors, what are the major institutional investors we have? Pension fund, endowment and foundations, sovereign wealth fund, banks and insurance companies. Now, from a purview of the past papers, it can be felt that the IPS will come from pension fund and or endowment / foundation. From sovereign wealth fund, which is introduced this time, there could be some question which is a part of a bigger question, or perhaps in the PM session. In bank and insurance company, the focus is on asset liability management, the last LOS of the chapter. So you should be mentally ready to understand that pension and endowment is the one from which a big IPS can come about in the AM session. Actually, it will come, is what I should say. The class that you have already been provided, we had extensively invested time in pension and in endowment foundation, doing a lot of IPS from the past papers. So the purpose of this class is to do the questions from core reading, both the chapter examples as well as chapter end questions, which are really very good. I have been again and again impressing upon audience of CFA Level 3 that when you do a topic, suppose you have done pension, after 1 month, you will feel that you don't remember. And you will feel like listening to my class again. But I think that's a time wastage. If you instead straight away go to the questions and read the answers of the questions very properly, there will be a much faster and more comprehensive and applicative knowledge coming to you. So please, in level 3, do not keep on revising what has been done. Otherwise, you will never feel that you have completed anything. Whether it's fixed income or equity, you don't remember, doesn't matter. You straight away get to the questions. Of course, you got to do it once. So you do it once, but later do not worry about the revision of it. Straight away get into the questions. The more you are spending time in the questions with the reading of the solution, okay, questions doesn't mean that you do the question and this is correct. You read the solution given, the more you are revising effectively and efficiently. Understood? I mean it. Please apply this technique. So now, the assets under management for institutional investors at the end of 2016 was around $70 trillion. $70 trillion, and half of it, that is $35 trillion, was in pension. So you understand the importance of pension fund. Over the years, there has been a change in the investment philosophy of these institutional investors. LDI, liability driven investing, which used to be a forte and a domain of only banks and insurance companies, it is found that many pension funds are also following the LDI strategy. They are looking at the pension liabilities and the assets characteristics should match the same. Also, the investment strategy used by the institutional investors has become more active, and we find more and more allocation towards alternate investment as against the age-old days when predominant investment used to be made in fixed income. But given the fall in interest rates, there is no return left in fixed income. So they had to move to equity, and they moved to alternate investment, especially the endowments and those pension funds where the investment horizon is very high and the liquidity requirement is very low. So this has been a normal trend. Now this is what the author has discussed in section 1, the introduction section. They have discussed these thematic changes that are taking place. Of course, we know that the world has also moved from DB plan to DC plan because employers, sponsor, are not able to take the risk. There's so much of risk involved in managing a DB plan that most of the companies are now offering a DC plan where you give choices to the employees as to which particular menu they want to go for, and the life stage investing wherein at a certain age their portfolio becomes more conservative, moving towards fixed income. Once again that age crosses, they move towards fixed income. So a glide path is there. The glide path stuff that we have done, especially in asset allocation chapter. Okay, the glide path. With time, there's a target date investing, the allocations automatically change. So these are the things which are discussed in the section 1 of the institutional IPS section. Nothing testable from there, just a theme that I was sharing with you. Now, section 2 goes into the characteristics. Section 2 goes into the characteristics of institutional investors. And they mention 5 characteristics: scale, governance structure, regulations, long-term investment horizon, principal agent conflict. Okay, 5 characteristics. You know my habit. I cannot show you slides or core and then start showing you that. I always command the thing because that way you are able to understand more. So let me go to the whiteboard so that when I speak so many terminology, you are comfortable with them. So section 2, just one second, let me show the board to you. Yeah. Section 2 is basically characteristics. And characteristics, they have discussed 5 characteristics: scale, long-term investment horizon, regulatory structure. So I'm writing regulations. Banks, insurance companies are heavily regulated. Okay. Regulations, even pensions are subject to the ERISA norms. We have done it in our main class. Governance structure. Governance structure was beautifully discussed in the asset allocation section. That there's a board of directors and they set up an investment committee, and the investment committee is then followed by investment staff which does the implementation part. So you should refer to the asset allocation initial LOS for the entire governance structure. And the final is principal agent conflict. What happens when you write this in your own words? When you write this like this, it remains in your head. If you are reading it from a book, the retention level is low. When you are spending time over here, the retention level is high and you are writing it specially. So scale wise, if there is a particular pension fund or endowment fund with assets under management of say $30 million, $20 million, that's too small. They cannot hire the best of staff. They cannot invest in too much in alternate investments like private real estate or private equity, because there might be some minimum threshold which they have to follow. Similarly, if the scale is too big, in that case a very major allocation to private real estate and all cannot be done, because then they will leave a footprint. No, everybody will start following them because the funds are too much that they have. So scale wise, a very small scale, $20 million, $30 million, AI not advisable. I'm not saying that you can't touch AI, but you can't have an asset allocation predominantly in AI. Okay. And if there is a very big scale, in that case also some of the allocations to AI and all will become questionable, because you will start leaving a footprint. Long-term investment horizon, fine. We know that endowments, perpetuity, and even pensions with a young workforce, with active life predominant portion. So they will have a long-term investment horizon, low liquidity, and therefore the risk tolerance level will go up. Whereas for banks, they will have a short-term investment horizon, and therefore the risk tolerance level is obviously lower. Okay. For life insurance versus property casualty insurance, we've already discussed, so I'm not trying to go too much into them. Regulations, as I said, banks and insurance companies are heavily regulated. Even pensions are regulated by ERISA norms, and the fact that they have to show the net pension asset or net pension liability on the balance sheet, the fact that they cannot terminate a DB plan in between, the fact that they have to show in the income statement the service cost, the other expenses, okay, the pension cost has to be properly shown. So all those accounting guidelines are also there, ERISA guidelines are also there. Governance structure. Most institutional investors have a proper governance structure wherein you have the board of directors, investment committee, investment staff. I would in fact like to write that, may I write the same, just one second. Governance structure. So we have the board of directors and then the investment committee and then the investment staff, and of course they outsource to a large number of portfolio managers and all. Okay. Regulations, I said banks and insurance companies are heavily regulated. Even pensions, they are subject to ERISA. I do not remember the full form right now, nor do I need to. And accounting standards. Okay, let me write GAP. Principal agent conflict. So obviously, say in a pension fund, the beneficiaries are the employees, but then the sponsor company has set up the board of directors, investment committee to manage the fund. There is a principal agent conflict. When the particular fund is outsourcing some of the portfolio management to outside vendors or consultants, there is once again a principal agent conflict. So principal agent conflict is there. It is significant. Okay, it is significant in all institutional investors because the beneficiaries are not managing it. Somebody else is managing it. So that's somebody else, whether he's doing something for his own benefit, charging a higher fee, or is doing for the benefit of the pension beneficiaries. That has to be seen. So these are the 5 characteristics, okay? Scale, long-term horizon, regulations, governance structure, and principal agent conflict. Okay? Sure. Next, section 3. Section 3 goes on to investment policy. Okay, an overview of the investment policy. So what is the strategy that they will use for the purpose of managing the portfolio? Investment policy. Okay, the IPS portion. So every particular institution has a mission and the mission is codified, and then from the mission emanates the investment objective and investment guidelines. So there's a codification of mission. So when they ask you the investment objective, you should first write down the mission, then the investment objective, and then there are obviously investment guidelines. All these are codified. It's very formal out here. Now, the important thing in section 3 is to learn that there are 4 models of investment. Very, very important. This was not there in the 2019 curriculum. 4 models of investment. What are the 4 models? One is the Norway model, Norway. The second is your endowment model. Endowment model. Third one is the Canadian model. Canadian. And the fourth one is the LDI, which you know, liability driven investing. For banks, insurance companies, their ability to meet the liabilities, the portfolio assets has to ensure that asset liability management is there. Even pensions have started adopting LDI strategy. Okay, because they have to focus on A minus L, the surplus. Okay, now let's understand. Basically, the Norway model is the traditional type model. It is the passive model, which allocates suppose 60% to equity, 40% to fixed income. I'm just giving a rough idea. It could be 55-45. And which tries to do passive management. There might be a small allocation to alternate investment. That's possible. And they have low fees. It's very easy for the board to understand what's going on. And they have low tracking error. So low tracking error, low fees, easy to understand. It's easy for the board of directors to understand what's going on. The disadvantage is that there is less potential for value addition and less potential for above market returns. less potential for value addition, less potential for above market returns. As it always happens with my class, I will share the slides, the PPT slides, in case you are not going through the core readings. You can look at the main points in the PPT slides, but I will not use the slides in class to show and to mark. Okay, I cannot do that. I will always command the class. So Norway model is a passive model. May I mark it? It's like a passive model, passive. It's like 60-40, 60-40 just for indication. Low AI, maybe not present at all. Low tracking error, low expense, and transparent and easy to understand. Transparent and easy. So this is the Norway model. The drawback of the Norway model is that limited potential for value added and above market returns. There is no potential for value added alpha. Okay, they cannot beat the market because they are following passive. You know what is passive. So limited potential for value addition and above market returns. Correct? Next. Endowment model. Now, endowment model and Canadian model are similar. In what sense? They will both heavily allocate to AI. Heavy allocation to AI. What is heavy? Might be 40% to AI. I don't mean to say 80%. Heavy allocation to AI. Active management. But endowment will do it as outsourcing. Canadian will in-house it. In endowment will be outsourced. Canadian would be in-house. I repeat, heavy allocation to AI, active management. Endowment will outsource the portfolio management. Canadian will in-house it. In both of them, the advantage is there's a high scope of value addition and above average returns. Plus, in the Canadian model, in-house talent development takes place. Okay, in-house talent development. And the drawback is that they involve manager selection risk, because you know that in AI, the dispersion of different managers' performance is very high. So it is not about the fact that I chose allocation to real estate and you chose allocation to real estate. It's a question that which manager did I select? Which hedge fund manager? Which hedge fund strategy did I select? So manager selection skills become very important. It's costly when you hire such staff. So the cost is high, the fees is high, and manager selection risk is high. These are the drawbacks, and the positive was there's a scope of potential value added and scope for above average market returns. Okay, so may I write the common things first? The common things in both of them is that heavy allocation to AI. Heavy allocation to AI. I don't mean to say 80%, I mean to say 30-40%. Heavy allocation to AI. Active management. Active management. This is the common thing. Okay. Scope for value added and above market return. Okay, scope for value added above market return. What's the drawback? The drawback is high fees, manager selection risk, less transparent, difficult for board to understand, difficult for board of directors to understand. Okay, so it's very rough notes going on, but believe me, it helps because you're writing something. It just will increase your attention level to way above limits. No matter how sophisticated you become, believe me, writing is such a skill, especially the rough writing. At higher levels, you can just write it in rough. I've seen so many top managers even now, they sit with a pad and pen and in the traditional way, they just scribble something when they are coming to a decision. I've seen so many decision makers in life. Of course, the new managers and all that, they might be using spreadsheets and all for everything. But believe me, that art which is there in picking up the pen and writing on the pad, okay, that's unparalleled. Anyways, individual choices. And LDI, I don't think I need to say. If I need to say something over here, then what did we do in ALM? Asset liability management. So let's not write anything on LDI. So this is section 3, correct? So section 2, characteristics, 5 characteristics. Section 3, basically 4 models. Norway is the passive model, Endowment Canadian, active model, AI, but one is outsourced, the other is in-house. I have not written that. LDI is liability-driven investing, correct? Oh. So these 2 sections I had not spoken in my original classes, so I have done it more properly now. Now, I think we can straight away now step into question solving, because whatever revision will happen in pension and endowment, it needs to take place via questions. Let's move into it. So I'll first of all go to chapter end questions, and in fact, if I feel after doing the chapter end questions that basically you've got the rhythm, in that case I may skip the in between chapter examples which are given, or do only a few of them, because see, the main rhythm comes when you do the chapter end questions, okay, but the example should also be done because they're just increasing our maturity level. Okay, so let's go to the core. I'm going to the core now. So I'm going to the chapter end. The CFA Institute core readings, practice problems. Okay, let me make it bigger. Okay, perfect. Question number 1 to 7 are related to this. You know our way of doing the item sets. We read a certain portion, we feel that they must have definitely asked question on the same. We go to the question, then read further, then question, then read further. This is the process of solving the item sets that we have always percolated from level 2 onwards. Let's see. Azarao is a portfolio manager for Westcom Investments, an asset management firm. Azarao is preparing for meetings with 2 of Westcom's clients and obtains the help of Boulder, a junior analyst. Perfect. The setting is perfect because in initially 3-4 lines they set up the stage, and many people, they are not able to understand that and they then struggle in what's happening. So there is an asset management firm called Westcom, and Azarao is a portfolio manager. So he has to meet clients, and Azarao is assisted by Boulder. So Boulder is the subordinate. So Azarao, Boulder, they are working for the Westcom company, and they are going to meet 2 clients. Okay, the clients in this chapter will be institutional investors, correct? The first meeting is with Maglau Incorporation, a rapidly growing US-based technology firm with a young workforce and high employee turnover. We know we are going to mentions. So there's a technology firm, and this technology firm has a young workforce, so high risk tolerance, ceteris paribus, and high employee turnover. High employee turnover, many people don't understand this. If employee turnover is fast, vesting takes place slower, because you know there's a vesting schedule. If you work for 4 years or 5 years, 6 years, then only the pension starts vesting. So if it is not getting vested, the company is not getting the liability. So in that case, the liability will be lower and risk tolerance will be higher. Okay, so if employee turnover is high, that's very good, risk tolerance is low. Employee turnover high, risk tolerance low. Explanation: if the employee turnover is high, vesting is taking place at a lower rate, so liabilities are not being built, so you can take more risk, correct? So there are 2 characteristics which are given over here, workforce characteristics, which indicate high risk tolerance. Number 1, young workforce, so they have a long time horizon, they do not have liquidity requirement too much. Okay, number 2, employees are leaving the company fast. So in that case, obviously, they are not getting the vested pension benefits. So liabilities are low. Accordingly, risk tolerance is high. Azarao directs Boulder to review the details of Maglau's defined benefit pension plan. The plan is overfunded. Once again, risk tolerance is what? Low. Risk tolerance is what? High. The plan is overfunded. There is a surplus. Funding ratio is more than 1. The planned assets are greater than the planned liabilities. On the balance sheet, we have net pension asset and has assets under management of $25 million. Very low. $25 million is peanuts. So they cannot hire the best of managers and do AI and all that. Boulder makes the following 2 observations. Observation 1. Maglau shareholders benefit from plan's overfunded status. Obviously, this is a defined benefit plan. In the defined benefit plan, the benefits are defined. The sponsor has to make contributions to make the plan remain adequately funded. So if the plan is overfunded, in that case, contribution need not be made. Because if contribution are made, it will hurt the shareholders because net income will come down. There will be a cash outflow. It will hurt. So net income will come down. But we have an overfunded status. Even on the balance sheet, we have a net pension asset that will obviously propel the market value of equity. It's good for equity shareholders. Yes, it is good. Okay. The funded ratio of Maglow's plan will decrease if employee turnover decreases. True. If employee turnover decreases, that means employees are not leaving. Then the vesting is taking place at a higher rate. And if vesting is taking place at a higher rate, the liability is rising. And therefore the funded ratio will what? Decline. Correct? So both the observations 1 and 2 are correct. Let's see the question. Which of Boulder's observations regarding Maglow's pension plan is correct? Option number C. Both the observations 1 and 2 are what? Correct. Maglau outsources the management of the pension plan, I'm reading further, entirely to Westcom Investments. Okay. So Maglau, since it has a very low assets under management, 25 million, they don't have expertise to manage themselves. They have outsourced their entire portfolio management and they outsourced only to Westcom. Now that is surprising. I think when you outsource, you should outsource to 2 or 3 firms. But they've outsourced to a single investment firm, Westcom. It gives me a feeling of the principal agent conflict. Anyways, the fee structure requires Maglau to compensate Westcom with a high base fee regardless of performance. Look at this. So there might be something, the dirtiness that happens in the game. If somebody in the technology firm, they are related to Westcom or they're receiving kickbacks, they can agree for a higher fees. Now, I'm not saying it is happening, but it is definitely sounding bells in my mind. How come you outsource to a single firm and how come you pay them a high base fee, okay, which is not dependent on performance? It's clear cut. A conflict of interest going on. Boulder tells Azrao that outsourcing offers small institutional investors such as Maglow's pension plan the following 3 benefits. Okay. What are the benefits of outsourcing? Benefit 1. Regulatory requirements are reduced. Wrong. Regulators know pretty well that when there's an outsourcing, there would be a lot of principal agent conflict and therefore there are a lot of regulations wherein you have to file the due diligence report on what basis you selected the outsourced vendor. Okay, so there are a lot of guidelines which are there. They are writing regulatory requirements are reduced. No, when you are outsourcing, there is principal agent conflict and regulatory requirements are enhanced. Okay, benefit 2. Conflict of interests are eliminated from principal agent issues. Wrong. Conflict of interests are elevated. They are not mitigated, they are elevated. So both the statements are wrong. Investors have access to wide range of investment strategies through scale benefits. Correct? Because see, we are having an asset under management of only $25 million. So we are not able to invest in several private equity or hedge fund that may be having a minimum threshold requirement. Okay, so we are not able to do them. We are not able to enjoy the scale benefits. But if we if we are outsourcing it, in that case, that particular firm may be having a huge scale and going to the best of hedge funds or private equity funds and maybe having the best talent to manage AI. So I think benefit number 3 is the only which is correct. The benefits of outsourcing, benefit 1 and 2 are wrong. Regulations are more if you outsource and conflict of interest is more if you outsource. Correct? Let's look at the question. Question number 2. Which of the benefits of outsourcing the management of the pension plan suggested by Boulder is correct? Benefit 3. The fact that scale benefits will arise They'll be able to invest in diversified asset classes. Okay. Now we read further. Yeah. In the meeting with Maglau, Azarao describes the investment approach used by Westcom in managing the pension plan. Okay, so what is the investment approach? Okay, that was section 3. Remember the 4 approaches: the Norway model, the passive one, the endowment model, the Canadian model, and the LDI. So Westcom is describing what approach does it follow to manage the pension plan. Let's see. The approach is characterized by a high allocation to AI. That means either endowment or Canadian. Significant active management and reliance on outsourcing assets to other asset managers. Okay, so they are outsourcing to other external managers. What is it? Endowment model. Azarao also explains that Maglow's operating results have a low correlation with pension asset returns. Okay, see, that part was one thing. Now they've gone into once again risk tolerance. So I think I'll complete that part first of all. Just once again, question number 3. Westcom's investment approach for Maglow's pension plan can be best characterized as which model? Endowment model. Okay. Now we read further. This is the style that we do the item sets. I'm reading further. Azarao also explains that Maglow's operating results have a low correlation with pension asset returns. Very good, because in case the pension fund goes into an underfunded status, they will require contribution from the sponsor company, and the sponsor company at that time might be doing well because there's low correlation. So it may be in a position to contribute. But if there was a high correlation, when there is a underperformance and underfunded status, that time the sponsor company is required to contribute, and that time its performance is also what? Bad. So we love low correlation. Once again, risk tolerance becomes what? Higher. And that the investment strategy is affected by the fact that pension fund assets are a small portion of Maglow's market capitalization. Very good. Pension fund assets are a small portion of the huge company. Once again, risk tolerance becomes what? High. Azarao states that the plan is subject to ERISA and follows generally accepted accounting principles. Okay, so they have to show the net pension asset or liability, in this case asset, and they are supposed to show such and such components in the PL account as a part of pension cost. Okay, and they cannot terminate the plan. So they cannot terminate the plan with ERISA, and the accounting standards are of that type. Let's see, I think 2 questions will be formed from here. One is on the risk tolerance level, the other is on requirements of ERISA and accounting standards. Question number 4. The risk tolerance of Maglow's pension plan can be best described as above average. If this comes in the AM session, you have to circle above average. They'll ask you 3 or 4 reasons for the same. Number 1 reason, workforce characteristics. Young workforce with high turnover. Number 2, overfunded status of the plan. Number 3, low correlation between the plan's performance and the operating results. Number 4, what was it? Number 4 was, I just forgot. They said something. Yeah, the plan is a very small portion of the overall market capitalization. So, that way. Number 5, question number 5. Based on Azarao's statement concerning ERISA and accounting standards 715, which of the following statement is correct? Let's see. Maglow is not allowed to terminate the plan. That's true. I think they're not allowed to terminate the plan. Okay, I'll have to check again. Number 2, Maglow can exclude the plan's service cost from net income. They can't exclude, they have to show. Maglow's plan must appear on an asset on the Maglow's balance sheet. True. So that means they're allowed to terminate the plan. I'm sorry, because obviously I'm not aware of US regulations. So they're allowed to terminate the plan. They're allowed to terminate the plan, and they have to include the plan service cost in the net income. And number 3, yes, net pension asset will appear on the asset side. So once again, very important, they're allowed to terminate the plan. Just because I made a mistake, I will ensure that we write that down over there. Where was the point? The point was over here when we're discussing regulations. So in the regulations part in section 2, as ERISA I'm writing, allowed to terminate the plan. Allowed to terminate the plan. Okay, they are allowed. And as a part of gap, I want to write they have to show service cost and balance sheet dash net asset or net liability. All the level 2 stuff. Net asset or net liability. Okay, the typical level 2 stuff. See, there might be more regulations, but obviously they can't make us so much responsible for what are the US regulations. Na? They should not make us responsible, because in India we have a different structure. In UK we have a different structure. So making us responsible for a particular country is like a bit more demanding. Anyways, so question number 5 is the one that you should mark important, because see, I made a mistake over here. Question 5 you should mark important. I'm reading further. Azrao's second meeting is with John Spintop, the CIO of the Wolf University Endowment Fund. This time Endowment Fund is the second client. Okay, Endowment College. Spintop hired Westcom to assist in developing a new investment policy to present to the fund's board of directors. Okay, that codification, where you write the mission, then you write what's the objective. The fund, which has assets under management of $200 million, so not a very small amount, $200 million, but not a very, very big amount, just $2 billion, has an overall objective of maintaining long-term purchasing power. You know, endowment, all endowments, the objective is to maintain the long-term purchasing power and to generate a real return which is equal to the spending rate. To maintain the long-term purchasing power, that means you have to earn inflation, and to generate a real return equal to the spending rate. Of course, if you receive regular donations, in that case, even if you earn a real return less than the spending rate, the donations are able to ensure that you are able to meet the spending rate. Okay, we have done it in endowments. Has an overall objective of maintaining long-term purchasing power while providing needed financial support to Wolf University. During the meeting, Spintop states that the fund has an annual spending payout ratio of 4% of the fund's 3-year rolling asset value to Wolf University. So I think you are conversant with this language. There were 3 types of spending rule that was given. One was the growing rule. Well, whatever you did last year, you just increase it by a certain percentage. Generally, they don't follow. Second was the market value rule, wherein you basically contribute a certain percentage of your average, moving average of the assets of the last 3-4 years. This is what they follow, market value rule. And the third spending rule was hybrid. A certain weight given to last year and a certain weight given to the market value. Okay, there were 3 ways the spending formula. One was based on last year plus something. Second was percentage of market value, average. And third was hybrid. So they follow the market value usually, but you should know all the three. So 4% is the real return required. That means nominal return is 4% plus inflation. Then the return and the fund's risk tolerance should consider the following 3 liability characteristics. Okay, risk tolerance of endowment. Number 1, the fund has easy access to debt market, which increases its risk tolerance level because in case of need it can borrow. Characteristic 2, the fund supports 10% of Wolf University's annual budget, only 10%. So the university is not totally dependent upon the fund. Had it been 40, 50, 60%, that's risk tolerance level becomes what? Low. Because in case we do not do, our portfolio doesn't do well, we will not be able to make our contribution to the university, and then the very mission and purpose gets defeated. And the third is, the fund receives significant annual inflows from gifts and donations. Very good. That means that money can be used for the purpose of spending, even if the real return is less than 4%. So all the 3 are increasing the risk tolerance. Once again, see, when I was telling you now, that if you revise from my videos or if you revise from core, it is not effective. When you do this question, all the 3 points that determine risk tolerance are given over here. Can the endowment access debt market? Yes. Okay, risk tolerance high. Number 2, the contribution that the endowment is making, it what percentage of the college's total budget? Just 10%. It's okay. So even if we can't contribute, the college is not able to do anything. And third is the gifts and inflows that are coming to the endowment, are they good? Yes, they are good. So obviously the real rate of return pressure comes down. So they must have asked question. Let's see. Question number 6. The risk tolerance of Wolf University Endowment Fund can be best characterized as above average. Reasons, all the three. Next. The fund has a small investment staff with limited experience in managing alternate assets and currently uses the Norway model for its investment approach. Remember 60-40 equity, less allocation to alternate, passive management, lower fees, lower tracking error, okay, rigid tracking error limits, okay, but the disadvantage is no scope for value addition and above average market returns. Azrao suggests a change in investment approach by making an allocation to externally managed alternate assets, namely hedge funds and private equity. So now he is proposing, let's go to hedge fund private equity. Externally managed alternate. They have written externally managed alternate assets. That means I am getting the feeling of the endowment model. 10-year nominal expected return assumptions from various asset classes, as well as 3 proposed allocations that include some allocations to alternate assets are presented below. So you understand, they'll ask us which allocation is perfect. So we know that we got to earn inflation plus 4%. What was the inflation? Oh, inflation is given over here. Expected inflation for the next 10 years 2.5%. So 2.5% plus 4%. Our return target nominal is 6.5%. So we just got to check weight into return, weight into return, weight into return. Okay, which one is satisfying 6.5% return? Okay, weight into return, weight into return. Which one is satisfying 6.5% return? That you have to check. Okay, as you can see, allocation 1 will not be able to satisfy. Why? Because in allocation 1, 45% of the funds are earning only 4.1 and 40 are earning 6.3. So 85% is less than 6.5. How can the 10% 7.5 make up for it? Not possible. So I think allocation 2 and 3 will be able to satisfy. Now if you look at allocation 2 and 3, since I'm not sitting with the calci, you can do your calculations yourself. If allocation 2 and 3 both are satisfying the 6.5% return target, in that case, let's look closely. In allocation 2, we have 30 plus 30, 60% to hedge fund and private equity. While in allocation 3, we have just 5 and 10, 15% to this thing. They said that they lack staff. I think they said, let me read. The fund has a small investment staff. The fund has a small investment staff with limited experience in managing AI. That's sufficient. That means they can't go for allocation 2. They will choose what? Allocation 3. Okay. So both allocation 2 and 3 may fulfill the 6.5% requirement, but they don't have experienced staff to manage the AI. So they should go for allocation 3. Correct? Perfect. Let's go to the next item set. Okay. So the next item set, question number 8 to 12. Bern Zhang is the recently hired CIO of the Zanko University Endowment Investment Office. Okay, once again endowment. And this guy, Zhang, is the CIO. Okay, remember, we have the board of directors, investment committee, investment staff. He's the CIO of the investment committee, reporting to the board of directors. The Janssen University Fund is based in the US and has currently assets under management of $12 billion. That's big amount. Okay, but if there's a too much big amount, you leave your footprints when you invest somewhere. Okay, unless or until that area where you invest is so big that your footprints are like atomistic. It has a long-term investment horizon and relatively low liquidity requirement. Good, risk tolerance is high. The fund is overseen by the investment committee consisting of the board of directors, board members from the fund. So they're trying to say the governance structure is well defined. The investment office is responsible for implementing the investment policy set up by the investment committee. So the entire paragraph goes to say that the governance structure is perfect. Board of directors, investment committee, investment staff. The fund's current investment approach includes an internally managed fund that holds mostly equity and fixed income. I get the feeling of what? I get the feeling of Norway model. It is largely passively managed with tight tracking error limits. That is the Norway model. The target asset allocation is 55% equity, 40% fixed income, 5% AI. 5% AI is fine for such a big firm. Okay, with such a good governance structure, they can go for 5% AI. The fund currently holds private real estate investments, private real estate in AI, private real estate. Remember level 2, so they buy big properties themselves to meet its alternate investment allocation, private real estate. Question number 8. This is like AM session, the way it is given. Identify the investment approach currently being used by the investment committee for managing the fund. They are using the Norway model. Why? Because equity, fixed income, passive, low tracking error limit. Justify your response. Full marks. Number 9. Discuss the advantage and disadvantage of the investment approach currently being used. What's the advantage of the Norway model? Low tracking error, low fees, transparent, easy to understand. What is the disadvantage? Low potential for value added and above market returns. We discussed it. I dictated it. Question number 10. Describe how each of the following common characteristics of institutional investor supports the fund's allocation to private real estate. Okay. How does it? He's not asking does it support. He's asking how each of them supports. You just have to explain scale. The fund is $12 billion. It is $12 billion. So it can make a small investment 5% to real estate. There is no issue at all. Investment horizon, long term, no liquidity requirement, it can allocate. Governance framework, well established governance framework, it can allocate to private real estate. After a thorough internal review, Zhang concludes that the current investment approach will result in a deterioration of the purchasing power of the fund over time. That means they will not be able to earn a real return equal to the spending rate. Okay, and if they earn less than the spending rate, in that case the portfolio will get depleted. It will not be able to maintain the purchasing power. He proposes a new active management approach that will substantially decrease the allocation to publicly traded equity and fixed income in order to pursue a higher allocation to private investment. They are going to Endowment or Canadian. The management of the new investment will be outsourced endowment 100%. Identify the new investment approach proposed by Zhang for managing the fund, endowment model. Okay, justify your response. They are going for AI outsourced active management. Discuss the advantage and disadvantage of the new investment approach. Advantage of the endowment model, scope for value added and above market return. Disadvantage, high fees, manager selection risk, less transparent, difficult for the board to understand. Simple. Okay, so next one. Fiona Hazelwith is a 40-year-old US citizen who has accepted a job with Lyrical LLC, a UK-based company. Her benefits package. Okay, so once again, I was in extra rhythm. This is a person, a 40-year-old US citizen, accepted a job. So they're going to pension with Lyrical, a UK company. Okay, 40-year-old person joining a UK company, Lyrical. Her benefits package include a retirement savings plan. The company offers both a DB plan and DC plan, but stipulates that employees must choose one plan and remain with that plan throughout the term of employment. Okay, you can't change your plan. The DB plan is fully funded and provides full vesting after 5 years. The benefit formula for monthly payment upon retirement is final salary into 2% into number of years of service. The final monthly salary is equal to the average monthly salary for the last 5 years immediately prior to retirement date. That's perfect, the way it happens in DE plan. The DC plan contributes 12% of salary into the plan each year and is also fully vested for 5 years, after 5 years. So vesting period is same. Lyrical offers its DC plan participants a series of life cycle funds as investment choices. You understand life cycle fund? So when you reach the age of 50, your this much fund will be transferred to fixed income. Age of 60, this much. Alternate, another lifestyle fund. So the lifestyle fund will have automatic rules of asset allocation shifting, okay, to a more conservative level as you age. Hazelwith, the person, could choose a fund with a target date matching her planned retirement target, correct? She would be able to make additional contribution from her salary if she chooses. She can also make additional contribution, okay, additional matching contribution. Discuss the features that Hazelwith should consider in evaluating the two plans with respect to the following. So this is what I was saying. What is the need to read the core or to listen to my videos again and again? If you are doing the questions, the comparison between DB plan and DC plan from the point of view of the CFA Level 3 exam is summarized over here. He's asking how does the DB and the DC plan differ in terms of benefits that will be paid on retirement. So in DB plans, the benefits are defined. The benefits are defined. Of course, they depend upon the wage growth and depend upon the number of years of service. That's it. Over. In DC plan, the benefits are not defined. It depends on the contribution made and the performance of the portfolio. That's the answer. Next, contributions. In DB plan, the contributions by the sponsor company are not defined. It has the commitment to basically make contributions to keep the plan overfunded or just funded. But the plan can go underfunded and then they have to make more contributions. Would they be able to make that? We don't know. So you have to write that stuff. In DC plan, contributions are defined. 12% and plus we can also make contributions. Perfect. Shortfall risk. What if the pension benefits cannot be made to the employee? Okay, what if? Who will bear the shortfall risk, sir? The employee is not able to get the money needed to live. Who will bear? Obviously, in the DB plan, the company will bear, the sponsor. The DC plan, the employee is suffering. Okay, you know it all. Mortality, longevity risk. In the DB plan, mortality, somebody dies earlier, so less payments have to be made to him, and that money can be used to pay others who are living longer. So mortality risk gets pooled. Somebody dies earlier, the money that is saved, that is used to pay others who live longer. So it's pooled. So nobody suffers the mortality or longevity risk. It's like diversified within the structure. While in DC plan, if you live longer, you run the risk of outliving your assets. So suppose your assets are worth living 20 years after retirement and you live for 30 years. Next 10 years, what happens? Longevity risk. It's not the new word for you. You know it. Okay. So DC plan, longevity risk is borne by the employee. DB plan, it gets pulled out. Correct? Very, very important question. Number 14. Mark is the CFO of Antigliaro, a relatively mature textile production company headquartered in Italy. Once again, I get the feeling of pension. All of its revenues come from Europe, but the company is losing sales to its Asian competitors. Okay, the business is dwindling, low risk tolerance. Earnings have been steady but not growing, and the balance sheet has taken on more debt in the past few years in order to maintain liquidity. Weak balance sheet. Once again, low risk tolerance. Below average risk tolerance. Mark reviews the following facts concerning the company's pension plan, DB plan. The DB plan currently has 1 billion assets and is underfunded by 100 million, underfunded, low risk tolerance because of investment losses. Sorry. The company to date has made regular contributions. So in spite of making regular contribution, it's underfunded. The ability of the company to make contributions seems to be in doubt because the company is having high competition. The average employee age is 50 years. The company has many retirees owing to its longevity. So workforce characteristics are also haywire. Low risk tolerance. Duration of the liability is just 10 years. Discount rate is very high, 6%. So they've used a high discount rate to reduce the PBO. Now they can't increase the discount rate further to reduce the PBO and play with it. Okay. There is a high correlation between operating results of Antigliaro and pension asset return. That's bad. So when the pension performs badly, that time contribution are required, that time the company is also performing badly. So all the points indicate below average risk tolerance. Determine whether the risk tolerance of the DB plan is below average or above average. Justify your answer. It's below average. They're asking just 2 reasons. Remember, when they're asking 2 reasons, give only 2 reasons. Okay, give only 2 reasons. Don't give 5 reasons. In the answer, they might have given 7 reasons or 8 reasons. That is because the purpose of these answers is to educate and revise. They are not representative of the actual exam answers. I have been saying this again and again. People are getting diffident. Why? Because they are not able to write the language written in the answer. You are not supposed to. You just have to write over here. Number 1, plan is underfunded. Number 2, workforce characteristics. That's it. Workforce characteristics, of course, explain one line that average is just 50 years. High number of retired lives, okay, and duration of plan liabilities just 10 years. That way. Discount rate is high. So many reasons are there. High correlation. Weak balance sheet. High debt taken. Okay. Next. Prometheo University Scholarship Endowment was established in 1950, University Endowment, and supports scholarship for students attending Prometheo University. Okay, so the mission is to provide for scholarship to students in this university. That's the mission. The endowment's assets under management are relatively small. They can't go for AI and manager selection risk and all that. It has an annual spending policy of 6% of the 5-year rolling asset value. 6% seems to be high because they have to earn 6 plus inflation. So I think mission and objective is done over here. Mission is to provide for scholarship, and obviously the objective is to preserve the purchasing power of the portfolio and to provide a real rate of return equal to 6%. Perfect. Formulate the investment objective section of the IPS. That was the answer. The mission, the objective. Prometheo University recently hired a new CIO. The CIO directs her small staff of 4 people only, 4 people, to implement an IPS review. Historically, the endowment has invested 60% of portfolio in US equity and 40% in US treasury. That seems like the Norway model. The CIO's expectations of annual inflation 2.5%, so 2.5 plus 6, the nominal return has to be 8.5%. The CIO develops nominal 10-year return assumptions of US treasury and US equity. So we have 0.4 into 4, 1.6 plus 0.6 into 7, it's like 4.3. 4.3 plus 1.6, it's around 6%. Whereas the nominal return required is 8 point what? What was the inflation? 8.5%. So nominal return required is 8.5, but the nominal return that they are going to earn is only what? Around 6. You can also speak in terms of real return. So this asset allocation is not at all appropriate. The purchasing power of the portfolio will fall because the portfolio has to be dipped into to provide for spending. Discuss the current investment policy is appropriate given. No, it is not appropriate. Okay, because the real rate of return is less than what is required, 6%. Upon completion of the investment policy review by her 4-person staff, the CIO makes some recommendations to the endowments board regarding the investment objectives and asset allocation. He's making some recommendation. One of her recommendations is to adopt the endowment model as an investment approach. But endowment model, how will they choose the managers, because they just have 4 staff? She recommends investing 20% in private equity, 40% in hedge fund, 25% in public equity, and 15% in fixed income. I would have agreed to it, given that they want to earn a higher real rate of return. But how do they invest 60% in alternate asset with just 4-member committee? Sir, it will be outsourced. Then also, it's a small fund. They will not be able to get the best managers. Plus, they can't select the managers also. Determine whether the board should adopt the CIO's recommendation. No, reject, because 60% is too high. They are very small staff. Question number 18 is upon calculation of DE. You remember DA into A by E minus DL into L by E into delta I by delta Y. So that was done so brilliantly, I don't feel like touching it. And believe me, the questions are brilliant over here. I had done the chapter between examples also. They are a subset of this. So you can now move ahead into the chapter between examples and those from the candidate resources. Please do them now. Do not defer. Okay. And if you do them now, you have done significantly what is required in this chapter of institutional IPS portfolio management. Okay. So that's it from my side. We have ended the institutional IPS review section also. Okay. Thank you.